What's up Trekkies? Welcome back to the channel. This is my review of Light and Shadows, the midpoint episode in Star Trek Discovery's second season, which continues Burnham and crew's investigations into the red signals and the very ominous Red Angel. In this episode, Burnham travels home to Vulcan, where her search for Spock ends with some surprising truths about her adopted fugitive brother. Meanwhile, back on Discovery, Pike and Ash Tyler investigate a strange time anomaly that soon turns into a battle with an unexpected enemy. Bit mixed on this episode, although I am mostly leaning positive. It's an eventful episode that gives us some answers to some big and burning questions from earlier on in the season, and does feel like it propels the mystery of the season forward in a satisfying way. This episode is very neat though in the way that it's split down for me. It's almost like a 50-50 mix of things that I liked and things that I just really didn't like at all. So let's get into the good stuff, the stuff that I liked about this episode. And the first thing I have here is pretty much everything that's happening on the Discovery with Pike and Tyler investigating the temporal subspace thing. Now this doesn't get off to the best start with Pike and Tyler bickering on the bridge. It's got a bit of a teenagey, angsty kind of vibe to it. I kind of get that from Tyler, but seeing Pike engaging in this kind of bickering, nah, didn't work for me. But as the episode progresses, as they go into the subspace anomaly, things get far more interesting. I really like what this episode does in furthering the Pike character. This was still a very early version of the character where Mount was trying to kind of nail down what Pike was. And I don't want to give the writers too much credit here because I think that some of this was probably a bit accidental, but it definitely feels like watching season 2 of Discovery, there is a bridging of Pike's character from the more stoic hunter portrayal and that more fun version of the character that Mount gives us now in Strange New Worlds. Pike is working through his survivor's guilt as the Enterprise wasn't involved in the Klingon War. It's good character growth, it's good character work, and it's a welcome part of this episode. I see this as a really good example of Discovery taking a legacy character and actually giving them something, imbuing them with something of substance, of worth. Modern Trek has definitely taken Pike and has changed him to suit their purposes. I like what they did here. They're taking Pike, they're giving him a bit of weight, they're giving him some layers, and it's a good way to take the character from what we'd seen in those early episodes and really priming him for what we'd see in Strange New Worlds going forward. And I feel that they were able to do this without really kind of wrecking or torpedoing the character and completely changing him from what we had seen before. Another thing I liked about this episode, and this is pretty much par for the course when it comes to Discovery, is the visuals. In particular, I really enjoyed the bits with the probe attacking the shuttle. It kind of confused me as a viewer because it looked to me like the tentacle as it breaches into the shuttle. It looked real. It looked like a practical effect. I'm still not sure if it is or not. It might be a blend of practical effects and computer effects. I literally couldn't tell the difference. And I think that the visual effects guys will take that as a huge win because they got me. And what was that probe? What is that? What's going on there? Quick note, I am just reviewing these episodes in isolation. I know what ultimately the probe is, but for the sake of this review, let's just pretend I don't. I got some big Borgy vibes, a tool of exploration and scientific study just kind of bastardized into this horrible, vicious monster. Probably a weird tangent, but with all the blue and all the practical stuff, this probe sequence kind of reminded me of a 90s sci-fi horror film called Virus, starring Jamie Lee Curtis. It's a really fun kind of gory B-movie sci-fi horror. So if anything, if you take anything from this video, go watch that maybe. You might think it's shit. And it's been a long time since I've seen it, so it probably is shit too. But I definitely got kind of vibes from that movie. There are also some good performances in this episode. We get Anson Mount, who puts in a really good performance, pretty much as he always does. Ash Tyler, Clem Fandango, I can't remember the guy's name. Shazad Latif. Shazad Latif. I'm a Star Trek fan. I know their names. He's good. He's given quite a lot of stuff to do in this episode. He's kind of been this awkward character that's just been on the periphery for much of this season, but here he actually gets some meaty stuff to do, so well done, Discovery. But the standout performance here, I think, is Mia Kirshner's Amanda, who is really the kind of the heart of the episode. She really sells her maternal instinct and her just love and concern for Spock. So I think she did a really good job here, and she really sold that very well. I really enjoyed this episode's very subtle callbacks. With Discovery, we've always had a previously on Discovery, catching the viewer up with what's going on in the arc. Here, the recap is done via a personal log, which is a wonderful callback to how the menagerie got around its, well, how do we explain in part 2 what happened in part 1? Because I guess they hadn't come up with a solution to a recap on a TV show before. And again, I might be giving people too much credit here, but for me, I definitely took that as a nice subtle nod back to the menagerie and its creative way to do a recap. Was it intentional? I don't know. But I'm going to take it as such because of the way it links back into Talos 4 and the cage and subsequently the menagerie at the end of this episode. I also really liked the resolution of this segment when we see the probe evil AI machine thing tap into the Enterprise computer, and the Enterprise computer? It's the Discovery computer. Come on, man. Tap into the computer and Arium gets infected. We see her eyes flash red. What is going on there? Oh god, is Arium gonna go on some kind of crazy rampage through the ship? Kind of reminded me of the Battlestar Galactica season 2 episode where the Cylons are able to infiltrate the Galactica. I can't remember the name of the episode now. Is it Fragged? Valley of Darkness? Can't remember, but it kind of reminds me of that. It's this ominous dread. We're like, oh my god, what's going to happen here? This isn't good. Is Arium going to be okay? Spoilers. She's not. Now onto the stuff that I have mixed feelings on, and the first thing here is Spock, the reintroduction of Spock, played here by Ethan Peck. This was his first appearance on Discovery. Watching this episode, I think it's hard to judge just how good Peck is going to be, really because he spends most of the episode just kind of rocking back and forth, talking to himself, or just generally being in various states of being comatose. Like I said earlier, with Pike being a good example of Discovery's use of a legacy character, I think Spock here and in season 2 is a good example of just how not to use a legacy character. Was it necessary to take the Spock character and give him some sort of space dyslexia? Was it needed? I don't think so. I think this extra layer of Spock being an outcast is completely redundant. That's always been Spock's character. He's a man trapped between two cultures and two identities. And from having conversations with Star Trek fans that see a lot of themselves in the character, that's how they connected with this character. This kind of person who feels like they don't belong. Now the space dyslexia, I'm sure it's probably given a name in the episode, I just can't remember it, sorry. I guess this is more a modern creative decision designed to help the character connect with people with various kind of neurodiversities. For neurodiverse people who feel that they can connect with this character now because of what we see in this episode, if that is the case for you, then, I mean, who am I to tell you that's a bad thing? If you like this development of the character because of what they did in this episode, that's great. And I guess if we zoom out and we look at that whole segment in its wider context, the Burnham drama on Vulcan and later on the Section 31 ship just did very, very little for me. It felt incredibly soap opera. It was just really hammy, over-dramatic, over-egged emotion. I didn't like a lot of this at all. I mean, even Sarek gets choked up at one point. I mean, what the fuck is going on there? I don't think this is Sonequa Martin Green's finest hour. I feel like she's really overdoing it on the emotional front. Just so overwrought and just kind of hard to get into. It's cringe. Her reaction to seeing Spock, and she's got massive tears in her eyes and she's just like doing that lip quiver and she's hugging him on the Section 31 ship. Nah, I'm not really into this at all. More angst than Kirk discovering Spock's irradiated body in the engine room in fucking the Wrath of Khan. Bring it down a level, fuck's sake. Another thing I'm mixed on, and I think this is just a perennial Discovery problem, is the sci-fi stuff and just how quickly the show wants to speed run through it. I want to understand the sci-fi stuff. At least I want to pretend like I know what they're talking about. This is just a major problem for Discovery and modern Trek shows in general. It feels to me like the show's writers just don't have enough confidence in their ability to do techno babble. So they have to run through it as quickly as possible and hope that no one kind of goes, wait, what did you mean there? What's that? Can you explain that, please? It's like having a salesperson and they're just trying to close the sale as quickly as possible and they're like, yeah, hoping that you're just going to say yes to buying whatever crap they're peddling. I don't know about you, but my reaction to that kind of salesperson and to Discovery when it's doing its sci-fi is, no, slow down, what the fuck are you talking about? But Discovery shows its hand in this episode. The sci-fi stuff is not what the show is interested in. Let me read the script. Stamets says to Tilly, trust the math, but more importantly, trust yourself. Can you not trust the math and yourself? Can we not do both? And finally, onto the bad, and I've only really got one thing here, and it's just all of the stuff with Section 31 and Philippa Georgiou and all of that horrible nonsense that I just cannot stand, whether it's this episode or any other episode of Modern Trek that includes the Mirror Universe or Section 31 or Georgiou. Oh no, I've just remembered. Section 31 movie. I get it, it's a prequel, and hundreds of years ago Section 31 was more of a openly operating part of Starfleet, but it still doesn't mean that I have to like it. To tell you the truth, I always thought the Section 31 stuff in Deep Space Nine was okay. It was always a way for the writers to just tap into edgier, more mysterious, more shady stuff, and there's definitely a place for that in Star Trek, but Discovery, they went to that well and they fucking drained that well dry. Worse still, all this stuff with Georgiou. Now, nothing against Michelle Yeoh. I love Michelle Yeoh, but the character is just awful. and she's supposed to be. She's a Mirror Universe character. In that regard, she plays this evil, hammy, lunatic monster to perfection. But the show insists that we look at this character and go, she's cool, she's badass, she's a girl boss from another universe. Fuck off. Light and Shadows, like I said, it's a mixed bag episode, but I think there's more stuff in this that I liked than that I didn't like. I think this episode is good by Discovery standards. I think it's one of the standout episodes of this season, and I think it's taking place during a pretty strong run of the second season. Looking at the show, particularly judging it against what we would get in the final 3 seasons in that future setting, I do think it stands up as one of the better shows in the entire show's run. I think it's fine. I think it's perfectly watchable. It's not a standout episode for me. It's not one that I'm going to go to time and time and time again. It's a good, a passable, decent, watchable hour of Star Trek. There you go, there are my thoughts on Light and Shadows, but what did you think of this episode? Let me know in the comments below. If you haven't already, give this video a like and subscribe to the channel for more videos and reviews and stuff like this coming soon. Next to my head are some videos that you might want to check out next, so if you're up for diving in to the TrekLad vortex, maybe consider giving those a go. Until next time, I'm the TrekLad. Live long and prosper.